I never thought starting a true crime podcast, I'd be sitting down speaking to a former Miss Australia.
Well, it's your lucky day, Gary.
You a wag, a bikie wag, is that, or an old lady?
An old lady, love that term. And, I was strangled, I was shot at. A lot of really violent stuff went on, which I've worked through. And the first grenade came in, and that was a death tech grenade, and it hit me. And I didn't think in a million years it was a grenade or that it was the police. They had cameras in our house, trackers on vehicles, diggers digging up our property. When things were good, they were very good. When things were bad, they were very, very bad.
In part 2 of my chat with former Miss Australia, Felicia Djamirze, she tells us how and why she fell in love with another bad guy, how that went terribly wrong, and her dramatic tactical arrest that almost resulted in a hand being amputated. She talked about her reflections on a life of crime, why she has the tattoo "Fuck the Police", why and how she decided to live a more stable life, and what she's doing now, giving back to society. It's an interesting story. Let's have a listen. Felicia Djamirze, welcome back to I Catch Killers. Did I pronounce that right? I've been practicing it all morning.
You've pronounced it better than a lot of people. I remember when I was in the Supreme Court, they were pronouncing it Jamirez. And I thought, well, don't make me sound like I'm from the Mexican cartel. You're making me sound guilty before I've even, put a plea in. So no, Jamirze is how you pronounce it,
Okay.
but it's pretty good.
Okay, well,
Pretty good. At least it's not Jamirez.
Yeah, I've been practicing. Okay, part 1. We got a good understanding of your life, where it your upbringing. We touched on the beauty pageants and lifestyle there. Your relationship and your journey into the OMCG gang scene, being did we settle on old lady or partner or what was it? Or
let's just keep
or
it at
wag,
old lady.
old lady, a member of a gang. That ended in tears, and I'm making light of a situation, but it's a relationship breakup, and it's Cam's addiction became too much, and his personality changed, and there started to be violence, domestic violence, and you've walked away from it. So that's the point we're at now. What age were you at that stage?
Oh, I would have been early 20s at that stage, early to mid 20s.
Right.
Yeah.
After that experience, did you think, okay, maybe my lifestyle choices or the person I was with, maybe I should step away from that?
Yes, I did. But in regards to that, like I said before with Dean, it was a matter of finding somebody that was able to protect me, that I could feel safe with.
Yeah.
So looking back, it was like out of the frying pan and into the fire, basically.
Yep.
But in that time in my life, I didn't see it as such. I was just trying to survive.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that was having someone that could stand up to the wrath of an angry ex-partner that's a bikie that coming in. And,
most definitely.
And Dean. And we met Dean this morning and your mum, who have turned up, which is always a good sign that turned up for the podcast. But you did delve into the world of dating straighty 180s. And I want you to be kind to straighty 180s.
Okay.
Don't just shatter their confidence. But why didn't that work for you after what you've been through? Maybe I'll just give. I think you mentioned like an accountant. And, they get it.
That was just a really stereotypical, generalised painting of the picture.
They get a tough time. Did you try that? Did you try?
I did. Correct. So Dean and I had a period of time where we were separated because he was given 10 years in prison, and we decided to both step away from the relationship.
Yep.
And for the sake of remaining friends and being civil to each other, because if we tried to maintain an unmaintainable relationship, we would have just ended up hating and resenting each other, and we would have lost our friendship. So we decided to remain friends. We were still in contact while he was in prison. And I helped him as much as I could from the outside and still visited, etc. Spoke on the phone, sent letters, all the stuff that you kind of do, but without the romantic aspect of that. And also, too, I needed an opportunity to be able to move on with my life and see if I had a future with somebody else. And I gave it a really good red hot go at kind of, trying to date people that had lives very well outside of the experience of the life that I have had.
Yep.
And nothing against them or anyone, but it just did not work out. Our worldviews too different. The way that we see things were too different. There was a lot of issues around other people's families not being able to accept my past. That was quite taboo. Yeah. So I was discriminated against in that way. Oh, my parents would probably not accept that this is the past that you've had. And I always think my past makes me who I am, good and bad. It shaped how I am as a person, how I am as a therapist, the empathy that I have. So there's a lot of good things that have come out of some really bad things. And if people can't appreciate the good things that have come from those bad things, they don't belong in my life anyway. So there was a lot of that kind of went on. So, but I did give it a go,
Okay, I just had to ask. Just had to ask whether you did. Okay, we'll wind it back because we're a little bit out of sequence from it. We've got you've broken up with Cam. You've now got into a relationship with Dean. Dean's just outside the door, so just think what you're going to say here. Describe Dean to me.
Charismatic, good sense of humour, quite a character. Like, you notice him when he comes into the room because his personality is quite big. So is his gold chain. So very eccentric, vivacious character. Likes to talk a lot. Likes to joke a lot. Yep. We get along very well. Very good friends. Yeah.
And where had you known Dean before?
Just from the scene, right, as you would call it.
Yeah.
Just
the scene.
Yeah, the scene. Yeah, just from the scene. And what had happened was, I had heard that Cam was cheating on me with a working girl from Melbourne, and I thought, how am I going to get on Facebook to see what's going on? Because back then there was no Instagram. Yeah. It was MySpace and Facebook, but Facebook was kind of getting popular. Anyway, Dean let me go on his account to look up what they were doing.
Sneaky.
I know. I was doing a bit of detective work there, Gary. So I went on Dean's Facebook and I had a look and I saw that he had tagged her, she had tagged him, and they were shopping in Melbourne, and that kind of confirmed it for me. And then Dean and I just kind of kept in contact as friends from then. And then a lot of things happened in between in regards to, Cam and I and that situation, and things escalated and all the rest of it. But that's how we kind of started talking.
Right. Okay.
Not on a romantic sense. We were just friends, and he was helping me to...
Well, it tells me a little bit about Dean, that he'd get involved in that type of stuff, like helping you out if you're in conflict with your partner that's a bikie. What was he into at the time, or what did you believe he was into at the time?
I didn't ask.
Yep.
So, you don't ask, you don't know. Yeah. I could assume, but it really wasn't any of my business at that point in time.
But there was a lot of money around?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that was normal.
Right.
That was normal in that scene.
In the world that you knew. Yeah. But it was nothing to go out and shop at the top places, come out with the handbags and the shoes.
That's when we were together, yeah.
Yeah. And that was something you were attracted to?
I would say more the novelty and the feeling of it as opposed to the items themselves.
Yeah.
I'm not a materialistic person, but I think it was the thrill and the fun and the hit of being able to do whatever you want, buy whatever you want, go wherever you want.
Yeah.
It's quite an intoxicating feeling or emotion. It's not actually the items themselves. It's I can do whatever I want.
So it was living the high life.
Yeah. And when you grow up in, a situation where you experience some disadvantage, it is a real novelty to be able to go and spend $250,000 in Louis Vuitton. That's a big novelty. That would be a novelty for anyone. And I'm not defending those decisions. Yeah. It was just the hit, the thrill, the dopamine hit.
So you're getting that dopamine hit
it was
from
fun.
Living that lifestyle. I think in the book you talk about the life was we'd be eating at the flash restaurants, seafood restaurants, and not doing much during the day, do a line of coke and go out and get on it, and that was the lifestyle.
We've actually, my friend DJ Emma Salmon has put together a track where I talk about lines from the book, and she's done a track, and it says exactly those words. You go out, sleep, repeat.
Yeah, and get it pretty much was the lifestyle.
Yeah.
Did you have living that lifestyle? Like, I would be concerned because I've said I'm normally the one coming in the door, but at any stage it could end. Or was that part? I'm just trying to get into the mindset. Is that part of the excitement, the adrenaline that this is good? We're getting away with something here, but it could end dramatically.
I always accepted that there was a risk that we would be arrested.
Yep.
And that was something I fully considered, and I just felt that the latter was riskier in regards to not having Dean around and being able to protect me in those initial stages. And then it got to the point where, I was in too deep, and we had a really good relationship. Yes, all these things were going on around us, but we had a really, really good relationship. And I just thought, whatever happens, happens. Yeah. But never did I expect for the arrest to happen in the fashion that it happened.
Well, we'll talk about that because that was dramatic. But just with the lifestyle, so you at this stage knew Dean was dealing in drugs?
Yes.
And just because you've seen your father, and I've got to ask the question, like with addiction, and you would have seen in the lifestyle that you live, the addiction, even with Cam. How did you process that in your mind that okay, we're making money from this? What's your attitude to that?
In regards to that, I did think too deeply into it at the time. Mm. On reflection now, yes, I can think about it in a very different way, which I do. But at the time, no, I didn't give too much thought to it. And I think that speaks to the fact that a lot of the times people who are victimised become perpetrators, if we want to use that word. Okay. So both can go hand in different points of your life. Yeah. So you will see that where a lot of women who are actually in prison are victim survivors of horrific abuse, whether that be as children or as adults, and vice versa. And that even happens with the men. We spoke about that earlier, about the abuse that goes on.
With the bikies and
That's right. So a lot of the time people who are victimised as children or even as adults can sometimes then become the perpetrator or framed as the perpetrator. Then what happens is people ask questions like, growing up like that, that's very hard to cut. It's very difficult to compartmentalize. It's very different to compartmentalize. So it's very complicated because it's a demand and supply business, as you know. Mm. If people didn't seek out drugs and alcohol, then there would be no market for it. And I'm not defending it or saying that there should be a market for it, but hey, why don't we look at the things that we can do for harm reduction? So more places in rehabilitation facilities, better access to mental health care, better living standards, lower the cost of living, improve the social detriments that cause addiction to begin with, and then there's not going to be such a demand for the supply.
So the supply and demand, and I'm just thinking how you're processing it in your mind. Well, it's going to be there. There's the demand for it.
We got arrested and there was someone waiting right there to take over that exact same patch. So the war on drugs needs to be more than just arresting a drug lord. It needs to really look at the policies we have in place in Australia and the social detriments that lead to offending from a young age. Even before people are born, they've got a risk of being offenders, so to speak, or committing a crime because of the social detriments and the environment that they're growing up in or that they're living in. So what has to happen is we need to look at all of those things and stop using prisons as a solution for a myriad of social problems. A lot of people in jail should not be in jail.
We've got the war on drugs, so-called war on drugs is not working. But I'm just trying to get a sense of, I see you now and you're a person that comes across as a good person at that time, living the life, just how you reconcile, but it's almost like, well, if we don't do it, someone else is going to do it. And is that what was crossing your mind at the time?
Well, it was normalised to me because of my life with Cam.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
So that was the introductory period or stage, you could say, where it became normalised when it's something that should never be normalised.
Yeah.
And then also my upbringing with Yuri, and Yuri dabbled in quite a lot of illegal dealing. So it wasn't that frowned upon in my family system,
Okay,
so
well,
to speak.
that's getting closer to the understanding of it.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
Yuri was dealing in a couple of things. I wondered why he
Yes.
flew that cargo plane all the way around the world, the quickest, Guinness Book of Records.
Yeah. And to it was normalised for Dean as well, because he was selling drugs from the age of 13 to look after his siblings, because his mother had an addiction to heroin and his father was in prison. So that might give people a little bit more of an understanding of the whole victim perpetrator kind of dynamic that happens.
I just wanted to delve in there so people do get an understanding, and when you're explaining the way there, it makes it a little bit clearer. Getting back to the lifestyle, you plan to get married in Singapore, and what's Marina
Bay Sands, yeah.
I stayed there.
Did you?
Only a couple of nights, and it's the most expensive place I ever stayed in my life. That's like the Twin Towers with the rooftop pool.
Yeah.
And I got to say, I didn't think it was that good, but for the price. But you were going to have
You won't be getting a discount next time you go
No,
there.
well, I'm not going back.
That wasn't a great plug, Gary.
No, I'd probably get sued by it. That'll be interesting. But
I'll go instead.
It is great, the rooftop bar, but you had to book everything, and it was, you just didn't have the...
Very different too.
It was different. You thought paying that money, everything was going to be turned on for you, but it wasn't. You had to book and you couldn't get it. There was a good Japanese restaurant downstairs on the ground level.
There is a whole different level of wealth in Singapore, and it's a very... it's an international city, and it's very one of the most expensive.
Yeah.
It is, yeah.
Well, just getting off my whinge about the stopover in Singapore that cost me a fortune, you were going to have your wedding there, and that's why I brought it up, because that would have been an extraordinary cost to hire that place out.
Yeah.
So
Lucky we had only put a deposit and not the full amount.
But that to my way, that gives me an understanding of the lifestyle that you would have been living at the time.
Yeah.
So there was plenty of cash.
Yeah, if anyone's seen, what's that movie where they get married at Marina Bay Sands? Crazy Rich Asians or something.
Oh, I didn't realise it was...
There's a movie about it.
It was on that. The pool is nice. If you get there early enough, get a seat. Okay, it went bad, and it went very bad. And I'm not making light of this. We might have a laugh, because sometimes in darkness you've got to laugh at things, but... this world that you were living all came crashing down one morning. Can you talk me through it? And I apologise for making any joke about it, because I know how scary and horrific it would have been for you, and the injuries that you sustained. Can you tell us what happened?
I think that with humour, it's a really, really good way to cope through dark and hard times. And there's that really old saying, if you don't laugh, you'll cry. Even when I was laying in hospital in the burns, I was cracking jokes with the nurses, and they were like, we don't understand how you're kind of maintaining some kind of positivity or upbeatness when you're in such a state and in so much pain. So I think sometimes people, when I laugh or when I smile, they perceive it as I'm not taking the situation seriously. Yeah, I've been in some serious situations, and I do take it very seriously, and I'm not making light of it, but I do use humour to get through difficult things. And I think a lot of people do that as well. It's not that I think that what's happened is not serious, and I haven't taken accountability for my role in it. I have, but just wanted to kind of...
I know, I'm glad you clarified that, because it can be misunderstood, and I used humour to get through all the years in homicide and all the stuff.
You'd have to.
You really had to see some brightness in the darkness, if that's in the form of humour. But I'm glad you explained that, because I don't want people listening to the conversation and think it's just flippant. And
it can be very misconstrued as, she's not taking this seriously, etc. but I am, and I do a lot of serious work, and I sit with people who have been through horrific traumatic experiences, and I work with them on their mental health. A lot of the things I do are really, really heavy and really serious, so there's nothing flippant about it. It's just my personality, and I like to have a laugh, and I've got a good sense of humour, I like to think anyway. But back to the raid.
That wasn't funny.
So back to the raid. What had happened was there was a no-knock raid on our home in Hervey Bay. And at first I thought that it was a home invasion because there was some conflict going on at the time with, some other people. And I thought, oh, they're game. They've come to the house, home invasion. I thought they've got balls. I kind of thought, it's good on them. But I felt a very, very hot burning sensation and a lot of pain on my face and my hand. And I thought, okay, I've been shot in the face. And
you're in bed asleep at this time.
Correct, yeah. And the first grenade came in, and that was a death tech grenade because it needed to be a grenade apparently that could come through the window or through, the building.
Yeah.
It came through and it hit me. And I didn't think in a million years it was a grenade or that it was the police. I thought that if it was going to be the police, they would have just knocked the door down and shown me the warrant, right? Yeah. I thought I'd been shot in the face and I just need to lay here and pretend to be dead for a little bit and figure out what I'm going to do next.
This is a thought process going through your mind at the time.
Yeah, I was laying in bed and I thought, fuck, I've been shot and I'm just going to lay here for a bit. I'm still alive, but I don't know how long I'm going to be alive for, so I'll just write it out a bit and try and see what's cracking. Have they left? Are they still here? Do they think I'm dead? I was kind of, thinking through all of these things quite quickly. And then another grenade came through. I didn't know it was a grenade yet. Yep. And then I heard police on this loudspeaker that it was them, and I could hear the dogs and I could hear, certain things going on that all led me to believe that there was a raid. Yeah. So then I started to crawl towards the walk-in robe, the direction of the walk-in robe. I was quite disorientated, as you would know with, those devices, they disorientate you.
The often called flashbangs.
Flashbangs, yes. The ones that came after were flashbangs.
Yeah. And just a lot of noise, a lot of bright lights and just distracting and disorientating. So it creates a lot of confusion.
Oh, yeah. Well, they're designed for that. So, but they're designed not to come in contact, as you would know, with human skin or with furnishings, fabrics, a big fire risk, and obviously big risk of injury to anyone that comes in physical contact with them. And we saw what happened with the Lint siege with certain, ramifications
anyone
of that.
that saw the Lint Cafe siege where the situation was resolved when police moved in, the loud noises and the flashes and the bangs. Yeah. That is the type of thing that we're talking about.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So what had happened was I tried to get shelter. In the process of crawling towards the walk-in robe, another one had hit my elbow here, and my elbow was, hanging out, and it was blown out basically. And then I continued on to crawl to, get in between the space where the wardrobe is and, the end of the bed, and I slid down, and then a tactical officer stepped through the bay window and was, holding a gun to me and saying, put your hands up. But it was very difficult for me to put my hands up because this hand was mincemeat and this elbow was blown out. So I was essentially, dragging my arms up as best I could at that point and asking for an ambulance to be called.
Scary.
Yeah, I thought a lot of things. I thought I'm going to have my hand amputated because it just looked
Was the injury that bad, like a mangled mess, was it? I've seen photos, but it would have been after the treatment.
That was weeks after the treatment, those photos that everyone sees. What had happened was we had photos of the injury when it first happened when I came into the resus room, but the injury in the acute phases was horrific. Like, it didn't look salvageable at that point. I had come to terms with the fact that if I wanted to live, my hand had to go.
Okay. That I think there was a reference where the surgeon said that you might be losing your hand.
Yeah, on 2 occasions.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
and I woke up and I had a hand and I thought, this is great.
Yeah,
yes,
that's
got my hand.
That's what you want to see.
Yeah.
What were the police arresting you for at the time?
Trafficking, production and supply.
So they had a search warrant for the house, tactical search warrant.
They did, but I wasn't arrested until I was in hospital. They came after the fact, so
Right.
I was arrested after,
Yeah.
and I was under arrest in hospital. I wasn't arrested at the house.
Right. How what charges were put on you?
Trafficking, production and supply of methamphetamine.
And what about Dean?
Well, Dean had a really long list of charges.
Yeah.
I couldn't name them all. There was a lot
Yeah.
in the initial stages, as you know. There's a lot of charges, and then towards the end.
So they would have gone through the place, search warrant, and seized.
Yes.
What did they seize?
They had cameras in our house, in most of the rooms in our house, recording devices, cameras, trackers on vehicles. They had diggers digging up our property. So
Yep.
it was diggers, and they also had military tanks, those police tanks, on our property as well. I don't know what they were doing with all of those things because I was carted off to hospital.
Yeah.
And they also had the dog squad, and everything was ripped out and pulled out. And
full tactical execution of
the full, yes, yeah.
Okay, how long were you in hospital for?
Months. I was in the burns unit for months and months.
Where were I've seen photos. Your face, it was burnt.
Yeah, my eyes were burnt. I had 3rd-degree burns on my eyes. My corneas were burnt. I've still got gunpowder in my corneas,
Right.
and I've got gunpowder in my face as well.
Yeah.
It's a little bit. Look, I'm going to say dark comical when I go to the beautician and I have like a facial. And one time the lady was like pushing on these gunpowder particles, and I said, "Oh, you're not going to get that out. That's not that's not a blackhead or a pore."
Oh, right, they're trying to squeeze a pimple, but it's gunpowder.
I said, "That's gunpowder," and she said, "What?" So I've still got gunpowder in I've got gunpowder all in my elbow here, so it's like discoloured, and then all through my hand I've also got gunpowder. It kind of looks like speckled tattoo,
Right.
kind of black dots. You'd have to come up quite close to see it. So, and I've had a lot of surgeries as well.
Okay, so you were in there for months. You were charged. How long before it went to court, or what happened when you went to court?
I was on bail for 2 years, and then I was on conditions for 3.
Yep.
So 5 years all up, I was kind of had my freedom at the liberty of others, so to speak. Yeah.
What were reporting conditions, or don't leave the state, or don't associate with?
Can't leave the country. Being drug tested randomly.
Yep.
Things like that. So I had quite a few conditions
Was
on
that
me.
your first charge? Was that your first criminal charge?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dean, did he wouldn't have got bail? I wouldn't imagine.
No, he didn't. Definitely
He
not.
went
No.
inside.
Yeah.
Did you contest the charges?
2 of the charges were dropped
Yep.
towards sentencing.
Yep.
The charge that I pled guilty to is supply.
Yep.
So the reason why I pled guilty to supply was because in Queensland law, you may or may not be charged with the same charge as the principal if you're involved in any component or any part of the supply. So my part in the supply that was recorded on the camera was that I tested a set of scales that Dean allegedly used later to weigh drugs and then supply those drugs to somebody else.
Right, so that was your direct involvement in the supply of the drugs.
Yes. So,
but you're not saying you didn't know he was dealing drugs.
I'm not going to deny that. Of course I knew.
You're saying that you just weren't involved in it. That was his thing.
Pretty much. But in saying that, the law is open to interpretation. So, it was a bit of a difficult situation to navigate.
So you're in hospital for months. The recovery must have taken a hell of a long time if you're in hospital for months.
It's horrific. The recovery was horrific, and I put a lot of pressure on myself just in regards to everyday life, right?
Yeah.
But I put a lot of pressure on myself to get better.
Yep.
And to do the best that I could with what I had. I was happy and grateful to be alive. So that was the number one thing. And I thought I'll deal with the charges later. And another thing that played heavily on my mind in that time, that even though, yes, I was burnt and I had charges and I was quite unwell from the burns, psychologically and physically unwell, the priority was more so looking after Yuri, because Yuri was dying. As a family, the priority was making sure that his last, months were good months. So there was that playing on my mind, and I was happy that I was on bail. I felt very privileged that I was on bail, but it afforded me the opportunity to be able to bury my father. And I thought, after I've buried Yuri, like I carried him through his illness, I wanted to carry him to his grave. So after I buried Yuri, I was fully prepared to take whatever consequences come my way after that. I walked into the Supreme Court that day fully prepared to cop any consequences that came towards me after I'd buried him.
I would imagine you had an expectation or a belief that you might have been going to jail, a custodial sentence.
Most definitely. Yeah. I left the house that morning knowing that it could be, quite a few years before I would come back to that home.
Well, the burns, you had burns on your face. It looks like it's all healed up very well.
Lucky.
How was that? Because that's confronting when you've been recognised for your looks and then a burn on your face and your hair. Well, I lost all my hair, so that's a temp humour. I dealt with losing hair, but the burn on your face, that must have been confronting for you, along with all the other injuries, obviously, potentially losing your hand. When appearance has been something that you've traded on for a long time, how did that impact on you mentally?
There was a perspective shift in the sense that I was more grateful to be alive and on bail and be able to spend time with my father when he was dying, as opposed to being too worried about my looks. I did everything that I could, and that was advised by the surgeons, and I did everything I could to look after myself. I think I had an expectation that I would get back to exactly how I was before, but I soon realized that that is not possible. And anyone that's been through a trauma or an injury, mentally or physically or both, knows that you are forever changed by that. And there's a loss of identity with former self, and you have to build a new one. With your newfound identity. So I needed to kind of grieve the old me and learn a new me, and appreciate the good things that came out of that. So appreciation for my freedom, family, a higher level of empathy, and a higher level of respect for human life as well after watching my father die. So I was looking at the world from a completely different viewpoint after having those injuries. And I did my best to get back to as good as I could. And to be honest, what my motivating factor also was, a little bit of a fuck you to the police, when they saw me and I was all, the way I was looking, they probably thought she's finished. So it kind of drove me to say, no, actually, I'm going to turn this around and I'm going to flip the script on this situation, and I'm going to, get to the best point that I could. But I remember looking down at my hand at one point when it was still going through a lot of surgeries and it was not looking great at all. I remember feeling like that body part didn't belong to me. I'd look down at my hand and I would see my hand as not belonging to me. And that was a very, very bizarre thing to experience. But I don't feel like that anymore. But I imagine that a lot of people go through that when they have injuries. So that was very bizarre for me.
Oh, it's like losing a hand or losing any body part. Burns, they're horrendous injuries. So I could imagine it would be traumatic. But it's interesting you said that it sort of changed your view on life, and you realise what's important and what you want to do with your life. Yeah. And I do understand the motive of, fuck you, you've done this to me. Look, I'm still standing. I get that. Do you think it changed you for the better? Do you think you're a better person?
I've always been a good person.
Right.
I just think that it has led me in a direction that I never thought that I would. I never thought I'd be doing what I'm doing.
It's right. Funny the journey life can take you on, isn't it?
Yeah. I try to not look at it in that way, that it did me good or bad. Of course, I'd rather not have gone through the experiences that I went through, because no human psychologically ever wants to go through pain. We all go through life trying to avoid pain, right? So I would never kind of choose that, so to speak, although I did make choices that led to that. But no, I don't really like to look at it that way. I like to look at it with no regrets, in respect that everything I've been through has taught me a massive lesson, and then those lessons enable me to move forward in my life in a different way and help other people.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because it is a journey, and I am not downplaying what happened to you. It would have been horrific. And then
they got me good. I was laying there in the hospital and I thought, boys, you got me fucking good this time.
did you didn't get sentenced to prison? What you get a corrections order? What
yes.
What happened there? What was
3 years to be served in the community, and a big part of that was the fact that I had done a degree while I was on bail.
Yeah.
So here I am, one hand, doing a degree. Yuri's, they're having chemo, dying. I'm worried about, I'm probably going to go to prison. Am I going to get to bury him? It was all happening in my household at that time.
That's chaotic.
Yes, very, very chaotic. Always something going on, and when I went to court, the Supreme Court judge said, you're obviously a high achiever. He looked at my record of education. He looked at even the pageants that I had done and won, and the things that I'd been involved in, quite a lot of charity work prior as well. He looked at all of those things and they worked in my favour. And also the fact that I had been so severely injured and I was still undergoing quite a lot of treatment.
Yeah.
A lot of operations and a lot of different things to rehabilitate myself physically and mentally after that trauma. And I think all of those aspects led to me getting the community corrections order. Yeah. But also in respect to that, I think it's the way that I presented, the way that I look, and the colour of my skin and the privilege that I had. So I think a lot of people are not afforded the opportunity that I was afforded to not go to prison.
It's interesting you say that, and you would have had your family supporting you.
Mm-hmm.
You've had the history of demonstrating you could function in society. You've done your studies. The court's got it right for you, but what you're saying is that there's other people that fall through the gaps in your situation, and your looks, background and everything played a part in your not going inside.
Correct. And I think a thought needs to be put to that topic, because a lot of people are sent to prison based on external factors that have nothing to do with the offending. So, race does come into it, level of education comes into it. There's a lot of different things that come into how people present. And a lot of those things, if not all of those things, that's not within the realm of control of that person. For example, if I had dark skin, which I could have been born dark skinned because my mother's background is Indigenous, actually. Yeah. In the book it touches on Yuri's family thought that I was going to be born dark.
Yep.
So if I had been born with a different colour skin, would I have went to prison? I would say there was a much higher chance I would have been going to prison if I wasn't blonde and green-eyed with fair skin. So race does come into it when it comes to sentencing, and that's something we need to kind of turn our minds to as well.
Yeah, no, that's a fair call. Like, people could say, no, that doesn't come into play, but
Oh, yeah, it definitely
I think
does.
Statistics would dictate
100%.
Otherwise. Okay, court matter. You didn't get a custodial sentence, but a 3-year corrections order. So, what did that involve? What did you have to do for that?
With that, I just had to be on best behaviour, but that wasn't a problem, to be honest.
It wasn't. No. Oh no, because if you breach that, you then end up going inside.
Correct. Yeah. And it did give me some time to reflect. I had a lot of anger issues prior, and I think that was dealing with the grief of growing up in a household with a parent who has an addiction. Because when you have a parent who has an addiction, your self-esteem is not great, because you view yourself as not having much worth if they're choosing drugs or alcohol over you. You think, what am I not worth more than
that's
a drink?
Hard thing, isn't it? Like, but Dad, if you love me, why are you drinking?
They can't
yeah.
possibly love me if they're choosing
So your self-worth
your
goes down.
self-worth. Yeah, and so I had a lot of anger problems, and I had a lot of self-work to do, and I did that while I was on conditions because there was no distractions. I wasn't going out. I wasn't drinking. I wasn't doing coke. I wasn't doing all of these things that I was doing in the past to distract myself from having to deal with these things. So I had to sit with myself and I had to deal with all of these things. So that's kind of where the shift happened, and during that period dealt with a lot of things.
With Dean, he was inside. You touched on earlier and said you made a conscious decision that go separate
Conscious
ways.
uncoupling is the...
It was conscious uncoupling. Okay.
I think Gwyneth Paltrow and Chris Martin, when they divorced, they called it conscious uncoupling.
That's a nice way of putting that.
Isn't it?
Just gone our separate ways, conscious uncoupling. But that would have been a difficult decision, but it sounds like you're back together again.
Yeah.
That's the old detective in me. You notice that because you've come in here together.
Yeah.
But what is it like to be a partner of someone that's in... Because how long did Dean get sentenced to?
10 years.
Okay, so that's a long time. So you two, you spoke and said both came to a mutual agreement?
Was said when he got out, we'll give it a go and we'll see where we're at and whether we can make this work. And don't get me wrong, there has been some real ups and downs due to the fact that we're both very different people to what we were before because of the trauma that we've both been through as a result of the raid, as a result of my injuries, and as a result of his long-term incarceration and institutionalization and the mental health detriments of that on both sides of both experiences. So there has been challenges, big challenges. And even though I'm pretty equipped because I work as a therapist, it's different when it's somebody so close to you.
Involved. Did you visit him in jail to start with and then make the decision we've got to have the break or have the separation?
Yeah, we were actually on non-contact because we were co-accused. So when I would visit him, it was just through the glass. And then we got contact visits after I was sentenced. We were able to then apply to have contact visits. So I visited him nearly the whole time. We spoke nearly the whole sentence. As friends after the separation. So we stayed together for 4 years. And then when he was sentenced to the 10 years, we made the decision to separate. I don't think there's enough support for families who are dealing with the ramifications of incarceration, but especially long-term incarceration. You know, I felt I was equipped to deal with it, and it was still very, very difficult because there's things that happen that you don't even think of. Even in the line of work that I do, we had an argument about something very trivial, but it came down to the fact that he had lost his spatial awareness from being in a confined space for so long. That was the reason why he couldn't see what I was verbalizing to him.
Explain that. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
What happened there?
So we had a box that was on the back of the ute, and I said to him, can you just shift it this way so that the cab will close?
Yeah.
And for half an hour, he moved it in every single direction instead of the one that I told him to. And I was very frustrated by that. And then finally he moved it and he goes, oh, it fits. And I thought, wow, that's bizarre. That's really bizarre. I need to look into this. And so I read some studies and I looked into it. And it's because he couldn't visualize what I was verbalizing to him because his spatial awareness was flawed from being confined for so long.
Wow. Okay. I hadn't even considered that sort of impact.
Me either, and I felt terrible for being so mean about it. I thought, I'll just move the bloody box.
Stupid,
Literally, yeah. So these are all the things, and that's just one thing, but these are all the things that families would really benefit from knowing so that they can best support their loved ones. But who's supporting them? Who's supporting the mothers, the fathers, the partners, the children of people who have been incarcerated long term? Who's supporting them?
knowing what they're going to be like when they're getting
It's
out.
hard. It's a hard slog.
You said Dean changed and you changed, and only if you feel comfortable. Are you comfortable to say how Dean changed, or notices that the change in Dean after spending so long in prison?
When Dean first got out of prison, there was a big culture shock for him because he hadn't seen things like the Woolworths self-service checkout.
Yep.
He was just very shocked by that. He was also shocked that we don't go to Australia Post to pay our bills anymore, that we do it all on the phone.
I know, we're laughing and we shouldn't be laughing.
No, we shouldn't.
But I can understand.
It's like Freddie Flintstone stepping into an episode of The Jetsons, basically.
It does just change so constantly, doesn't it? So take a couple of years out of the world that continually changes.
And things are still surprising him to this day.
Yeah.
Asks a lot of questions, needs to get up to date on how we communicate now, on how the internet works, because the internet back then was very different. We had those dongles that you would kind of plug into the side of a computer, and now it's all, Wi-Fi and all the rest of it. So it's all quite mind-boggling for him, and it was a lot.
Yeah.
It was just a lot of information to intake, and I imagine that a lot of people go through that.
How long's he been out for now?
He was released in February of 2024.
Right, okay.
So not very long at all, just over a year and a half nearly he's been out for. And only now I can kind of see that he's getting on a more even keel with getting used to being on the outside. But he has a very stable home life, and he also has full-time employment. Yeah. So that's probably the difference. He's privileged in that sense that he's got a skill and he's able to utilize that skill and go and work, and also access to really good mental health care. So there's a lot of things that he has that we have implemented that a lot of people can't. They don't have that available to them, and I'd like to see that changed.
How did he process, because my understanding with that police raid, you guys were asleep in bed together, and I would imagine for someone like Dean, the way you've described him, to see his partner injured in that way, there would be a lot of anger and rage and all sorts of things. How did he process that?
I think a sense of helplessness, because he wasn't on the outside to be able to look after me or to be able to assist in any way. My mother basically nursed me back to health as well as the medical staff. Yeah. So him not being able to be there, he would have felt very, very helpless. I would say. I can't speak on his behalf, but that's the feeling that I get. Yeah.
I just I would imagine the anger and that would have gone through his mind seeing someone injured like that.
Oh yeah, most definitely. And I think anyone would be able to empathise with that feeling of if you see somebody that you love hurt, or any fellow human being hurt, no matter what the circumstances are, you would feel some kind of, anger or empathy in and around that situation, especially because we felt it was unnecessary. If they would have come to the door with a warrant, we would have opened the door and just... Yeah. There was no need for the injuries, and neither of us ever could have perceived that the level of harm that was kind of carried out was ever going to happen in that way. Yeah.
Was that resolved? Was there an inquiry into the injuries, or was there any investigation done into that?
There was, and then there was a settlement outside of court in regards to those injuries. And I think that when we speak to investigations, we really need to look at having an independent body outside of the police that investigates police. I think that's the only way that we're going to see a culture shift and some accountability in the way that the police culture is at the moment. So I think that's something the people really need to be pushing for, that there's an independent body that does the investigations when there is suggestions or claims of police misconduct.
Felicia, I don't think that you haven't got an argument there. You want, if mistakes have been made, you want lessons to be learnt. So these type of things don't happen.
And I think the public sometimes, or the media, I shouldn't say that, but more so the media, or the other side views it as the family wanting to have revenge or see some kind of... No, it's we don't want it to happen to another family all the innocent bystanders that were involved and that were present at the time. So innocent members of the public. So you don't want to see that repeated for other families. It's not about, you know, who's right and who's wrong and blaming and, you know, revenge. It's not about that. It's about prevention and making sure it doesn't happen to anyone else.
And look, you've got your views on police, and you know, there's good bikies, there's bad bikies, there's good police, there's bad police. But I speak for the majority of the police. Like, they don't set out to injure people or, you know, cause dramas. And police I have seen involved in situations where people have been injured or killed. If they're decent people, it takes a cost on them too.
Of course it would.
No one feels good about it.
No one would want to be in that situation. And I think that's why we need to see a change or a shift in the culture within the police force so that these things, you know, don't happen. They're the preventable things.
And if we do, will you change your tattoo?
Never. It's my one and only tattoo I've ever gotten. I wasn't even allowed to have my ears pierced growing up, believe it or not. I do now, but I actually got this tattoo on the day that my conditions ended, kind of as a little bit of a fun thing to
I can see the...
Everyone was shocked. They were like, Felicia's got a tattoo. No, they didn't believe it. My mum didn't, but no one believed it. But no, I did get it done, you know, just as a little bit of a, you know, celebration of the conditions ending, you know.
Well, it's pretty funny. Fuck the police. Yeah. Okay, we can have a laugh about that.
But not all police.
Not all police. The studies that you did. What's the focus of your study, and what did that lead to?
Okay, so the study that we did looks at the adverse childhood experiences of people who later come into contact with the criminal justice system. And of course, we know there's going to be a correlation there. And it's been done extensively overseas, the ACE study, as they call it, but we changed it so that it was more appropriate to fit Australia, obviously, the cultural implications there. And what it showed is that there's always a correlation between adverse childhood experiences and later involvement with the law. So that tells me that we need to be looking at crime prevention from the start, not the back end of things. Yes, things can be done at the back end, obviously, with, you know, helping people reintegrate into society and not reoffend, etc., especially when we're looking up our youth, which we shouldn't be doing. There's other things that can be done. But we need to look at the social detriments that cause crime. So poverty, mental illness, addiction, the list goes on. I could name so many adverse childhood experiences that people go through. Abuse, sexual abuse. So there's so many other things that we need to be doing and implementing for our kids and our young people as crime prevention for the future. And it doesn't just make sense for the health of the nation. It makes sense fiscally. It's going to save us money because you're going to have good functioning citizens that are able to work, contribute, study, do all these great things. But if they're not afforded that opportunity, or these things are not kind of, these issues are not scaffolded from the beginning, how can we expect for children to be dragged up and then have no example and then go out and be fully functioning humans? It's just not possible.
I agree with you, and the sound logic in everything you say. How can we do that? How can we achieve that?
I think that is a very long conversation, but what we need to do is we need to give better opportunities to people who have conviction histories in regards to gaining and accessing meaningful work and skills. And I think, just look, a rough example, say we've got a mother, she has charges, she has convictions, whatever it might be, right? She comes out of prison, she wants to get a job. She can't because there's a lot of discrimination there when it comes to getting a job and to workplace discrimination, etc. So you get knocked back. And this happened to me.
Yeah.
So I got knocked back for jobs I was overqualified for. And it's like a slap in the face when you're trying to contribute and trying to get back into society. So if you give this woman a job and she's able to support herself, she's then able to support her children. That in some cases can eliminate child removal, which is another trauma on the children and on the mother. And she's able to pay her rent, put a roof over her head. And if there's a partner or ex-partner that's abusive or supplying drugs or whatever it might be to that person, they don't feel the need to go back there for survival purposes because they can look after themselves. They're able to house themselves, feed themselves, and look after their kids. So you're not just giving someone a job, you're changing the trajectory of their life, but also their children's life. And that's just one thing that can be done for crime prevention for the future, and also to break the cycle of intergenerational trauma, because they're then watching their mum or their dad going out to work. An example.
Well, I've seen too many families in different environments where there's 3 generations of the family members that haven't had gainful employment.
Yep.
And so, you follow your parents whether you like to or not. So you've got to break that cycle and steer these kids. Are you, because of your experience and the lifestyle that you've lived or experienced, what are you doing? Is there anything that you speaking to people about what can be done? Is there stuff that you're using your experience and your knowledge together with your now education to make a difference?
The majority of the work that I do is speaking about uncomfortable topics that people don't really speak about and that are not really on the forefront. So the discrimination that goes on in regards to hiring practices, and I speak about the feminization of poverty. I speak about the fact that a lot of people who become perpetrators are actually victims.
Yeah.
So I do speak about all of these things, and I provide education on all of these things, and I'm hoping that that's then going to be able to inform people who, whether they're in policy development, whether they're in government, whether they're in HR, whatever aspect that they're in, that can plant a seed for them to sit back and say, hey, what can I be doing better? Should I have more trauma-informed hiring processes? Should we change this policy? Should we do A, B, and C? What can I do to open doors for people that would usually have doors slammed on their face? And I'm not doing it as a charity or as a favor.
Yeah.
I'm doing it because I've got the privilege to do it. So I'm going to then afford somebody else an opportunity to be able to turn their life around. And that's a really powerful thing for people to do on a micro level within whatever's within their realm of control, basically. So I'm hoping to plant a seed to challenge the stereotype of what a woman and a person looks like who has a conviction history, that we're people, and sometimes people fuck up, and it's okay. It doesn't mean that it should be a life sentence. And like I said, if you do whatever it is you can do as a business owner, somebody in government, whatever it might be, whatever your role is. So whatever you can do that's within your realm of control, you're actually implementing crime prevention on a community level.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and I agree with it. It's getting it in there. Looking at the life you've had and the life that you're living now, I see when you're talking about that, the passion and the excitement that comes on your face. Is this rocking your boat now compared to the lifestyle that you used to live?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Most definitely. I absolutely love speaking about the issues that I speak about because I think it's important. You cannot change people's minds until you touch their heart, and the way to do that is through storytelling. And I think that by telling your story, you can shift perception and stereotypes. And maybe by me speaking about my experience, it's going to mean that next time somebody applies for a job and, the hiring manager sees that there's a gap in that resume, they're not going to be put to the bottom of the pile. Maybe they're going to give them a chance. And that's what I want to see happening, less discrimination.
Well, I think that would be a good thing. I've had a great chat. As I said at the start, I never thought I'd be sitting down speaking with a Miss Australia, but
I never thought I'd be sitting down talking with a cop. First time for everything, Gary.
Yeah, I know. Look at this. But thanks for sharing your story, and I found it interesting. And the book, if people want to get your book, it's called Accessory. Where can they get that?
You can get that from any major book retailer as well as on Audible. I read the book myself, so it's you can get any major retailer. Yeah.
Okay, very good. And if people wanted to reach out to you on the work that you're doing, or is there any way of getting in contact with you?
Yeah, sure. So you can reach my team at info at neuro neuro vhub.com, and then also just www.FeliciaDjamirze.com, and also at Felicia Djamirze on Instagram.
Excellent. Well, I've enjoyed the chat. It's nice meeting you, and good luck for the future. You've been through it. You've had the highs, you've lows, and you've got a life of purpose at the moment. And let's hope it goes well for you.
Thanks, Gary, and thanks for having me.
Cheers.